Thanks for joining our webinar on Generative AI and the Knowledge Graph with Sara Moccand. Please go ahead and pop into the chat and let us know where you're joining from and what you're hoping to get out of today's session. So my name's Anne Berlin, and I'm a technical SEO on the professional services team at Lumar. And I'm excited to be joined by Sara, who is an SEO specialist at the Liip agency. Sara writes prolifically about EAT and entity SEO and the knowledge graph, and conducts original SEO research as well. Sara, are you calling it EAT still?
Okay, so I would say still eat, but then there was a theory about need. So there is an evolution, but there is a blog about that now coming out, or probably is already out, I think, because yesterday it turned out and it was already out and I didn't know it. But yes, so there is a bit of an evolution on that area.
I've heard some people call it EEAT now, but I am firmly going to always call it EAT.
Me too. Let's stick to it.
Okay, we'll stick to EAT. I love eating. Sara is also a big proponent of mentorship, as evidenced by all of your contributions to the SEO community, the creation of the SEOnerdSwitzerland meetup group, and your recent co-creation of the Global SEO Club. So you should be very well known among many of our participants today. And before I hand it over to you, Sara, I'll just go over a few of our logistics. We're going to talk through some housekeeping details and let you know about the closed captioning options for today's webinar. And then Sara's remarks will go through 3 stages. First, what do we know about generative AI and the impacts that it has on brands? And where does the knowledge graph come in, and how are the knowledge graph and generative AI connected? And then some actionable strategies that brands can use leveraging this knowledge. And then we'll leave plenty of time for questions at the end. Please use the specific Q&A box for questions. I'll be monitoring both the chat and Q&A, but I'll be looking to the Q&A component for the questions that we field for Sara at the end. There will be a quick feedback survey at the end of the webinar, so please stick around for that and let us know what you'd like to see more of and less of in this webinar series. And of course, the content will be sent to all registered participants via email a couple of days after the recording ends. So if you have to drop off early or want to share it with your colleagues, that'll come through. We do have closed captioning enabled on our webinars now. So to access that, you'll either see a 3-dot more icon where you can click in and turn on captions, or you'll see a closed captions icon, which will give you the option to see the live transcript. Before I hand it over to you, Sara, we're going to kick off the engagement with a quick poll. So how many of the folks who've joined us today are concerned about the impact of new AI developments on organic search and the industry of SEO? I always get jealous because the poll pops up to presenters, but we don't get to click.
It's exactly this. I was like, can I click it or no?
We don't get to vote.
I don't get to vote. Okay, so I will not do it. It was like an instinct. Let's click that. So I'm curious to see the results.
I'm curious to see if anyone says no. I got this.
Okay, so there are quite a bit of yes. But there is some no.
Yeah, be interesting in the questions in the chat for those who voted no, what is easing your mind about the impact of AI in SEO and search. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to you then now to drive, Sara.
Okay, let's start. Thank you so much. So can you see the presentation?
Yep.
Okay, everything is good? Okay, perfect. Okay, so as Anne said, the first thing is like to figure out why it's important for brand. Because like for me, when I started thinking, it was like, Should I really dive into that one? Yes or no? So, oops, can I go to the next one? Okay, yes. I will give an example here. So I am Swiss. Okay, I come from Switzerland, which is a country in the middle of Europe. And there is this brand which is very well known. The name of the brand is On. If you run, there are big chances that you know these shoes. They are running shoes. They're really well known for their technology and I don't know what. Anyway, a lot of people use them. I go around the world and I can see people literally with these shoes on shoes on, which I'm very proud of. So I thought, oh, let's check out how cool we are in Switzerland. Then I went and Google with their new generative AI experience, and then I write on running shoes. And I was clearly making reference to the brand. And then I go and I'm like, oh my God, I'm making reference to the brand, but everything here, all this is not making reference to On. I find tons of other shoes. They're speaking a bit here about On, but then if I'm there to buy a pair of shoes, they're proposing me everything except On. And I even have the opportunity to see that I have a sale. So I'm like, okay, On shoes are cool, but here I have a sale. Maybe they are good shoes to run. So I was like, I don't know you, but I mean, when you see that, you're like, okay. And then I was like, okay, but these are sales, cool. Let me check like what is there. And then I go there and what I see is a product knowledge panel. I don't know if you know what is a product knowledge panel, but if you don't know it, it's exactly this thing that you can see here. So I see and I'm like, oh my God, not only I went to buy On running shoes, but then, or at least to visit, like see which shoes they have, which offer they have. But I also got a sales, and then I even went on that sales and I got a product knowledge panel. Okay, here you can't see it, but when you have a product knowledge panel, we are speaking about like you can directly buy shoes in another place. So, and we'll compare the price. So you're like, okay, that is quite a bit of information. And these are nice. Again, I wanted On brand. Then, okay, this is to show you what a product knowledge panel is. I just went and I wrote exactly the same thing about the shoes, so then you can see it here. Okay, as you can see, you have tons of shops that sell that for different prices. So I'm like, okay, that clearly gave me an indication. But why? I'm going to Nike when my goal it was not Nike at all. And then when you check your famous generative AI experience, what you get is then you get some related questions here. Okay, down here you have some lovely related questions. One of the lovely related questions shocked me. Is On a good running shoes brand? Okay, I mean, imagine if somebody say no, and I'm there to buy running shoes, and I want to buy absolutely On running shoes, and then I go there and I click, and there is a written no, they're not good. I mean, or something that expresses the doubt, and they're not excellent shoes. How bad would be that for you? We were lucky, yeah, because I checked it. Don't worry, it is written On running shoes. They're really good. But what I mean is that all this is generated by generative AI. So your brand somehow is impacted by this, and especially if you are selling. So now the question is, okay, so it is important. Yes, at least I concluded that it is important. Then it's up to you to decide. Now, generative AI come with a pitfall. We will speak about the pitfall in the next slide, but at the same time, we will introduce the knowledge graph concept too with generative AI. don't worry, this title is a bit weird, but everything will become clear in the next slides. So, okay, so what is generative AI? Okay, I think most of you know what is generative AI because you tested, we saw it before with the generative AI experience. So mainly is a conversational artificial intelligence, AI for artificial intelligence, and like if you use Bard or if you use any chatbot, but you know it. I mean, you ask a question and then you have an answer, and it's pretty cool. I mean, it's like having a human. I don't know. It's really cool to have that. The problem is that they are obliged to give an answer. Okay, so they can also invent an answer if they don't have a proper explanation. They can invent the explanation. I faced that problem several times. I will not go in the discussion on how, when, how, because the time is limited. But like several times I faced that, and I'm pretty sure that most of you have heard about hallucination or GTP chat, inventing answer. And this is when the invent answer is exactly hallucination. So, okay, so now there is another technology, which are the knowledge graph. Okay, and Google have a huge knowledge graph. Like we know if you are in SEO, you know they have the knowledge graph. So, okay, the knowledge graph, what it is mainly is a database. Okay, it's a database which store information. But what is interesting is that it is exactly the opposite of generative AI because they store factual information. Okay, so they're storing information then you know they are concrete. So when we speak about the knowledge panel, by the way, I wrote it here, it's like a sort of visual part of the knowledge graph, okay? So it's what you can see in, what you see in the knowledge panel is several information that come from the knowledge graph. Now, we have said that there is a big problem, which is generative AI, which can invent things. So that means that they can also potentially invent information about your brand. And then we have a knowledge graph, which is a database, then have factual information. So the solution is to combine generative AI, so this fantastic technology, with another technology that is the knowledge graph, because this will eliminate the hallucination part. The problem is that it's not so easy, to be honest. It's complicated because there are two different technology. They need to speak to each other, so it's not easy. But there was this paper that was created, and it calls Lambda, Language Model for Dialogue Application. Here you will find the reference to the paper. If ever you want to read the paper, you be free, go read it, and be happy by reading the paper. So I will not go into detail. But in this Lambda, what they're saying here is that, by the way, Lambda is like it was the base of Bard, if you want. Bard was like created based on that. So here, what they're saying is like, I have a question and I have an answer which is coming from generative AI. Now, let's have the similar question. Let's have the answer, but now let's double check the answer with a third party, okay? And this is a tool then put in between, then create the connection between generative AI and the third party tool. Again, I will not go in detail and everything, but the idea here, by reading the paper, it really, 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 really looks that what they are combining is the knowledge graph. So what they're doing, they have like generative AI, and then they try to combine with the knowledge graph to make sure that the information they're giving they are more like accurate. And then we don't have this hallucination problem. So Now, what can we conclude about that? Being in the knowledge graph for a brand was always important because you have a fancy search. If I'm looking for Nike, for example, and or if there I'm speaking about running shoes again, so making a reference to one. But if you're Nike, you have this fancy SERP with everything from the knowledge panel to just name it and they have it. Now, so that is also possible because Google is really sure about the information, okay, than they have. So if they are sure about the information, then they can give much more, give you a much rich SERP. Now, if, so for that is already very important, the knowledge graph. Now, imagine then from my point of view, I can prove 100% that, but from my point of view, it becomes even more important to be in the knowledge graph, because if you are a brand, they can like double check the information from the question that they have, the generative AI answer that they come from your brand, and then they can double check with the knowledge graph. So for me, that is an implication that is like being in the knowledge graph was important before, it's even more important now. So anyway, we will discuss a bit about the knowledge graph if you don't know what it is, but the idea, it's like try to be in the knowledge graph. That is like the main thing. So, okay. So now we will check the strategy, okay? And in this point, I will explain a bit more about the knowledge graph, but like the strategy that brands should use to adapt to generative AI. So, okay, so which strategy? No. Stop. Before starting the strategy, like here we have another poll question, which is pretty cool. Have you already begun implementing AI strategy into your SEO efforts? So let us know. Na. Again, I want to click, but I can't. And I'm dying to know the answer about that, because maybe we can have like other people that have a different strategy than I would suggest, and then we can compare the strategy, test new things. So that would be cool.
The most likely thing is using a ChatGPT plugin to do some sort of structured data analysis or natural language processing.
We have 60% already said yes. So probably you are absolutely right, Anne. And we can see at the end, the people then say yes, like what they are using, because I'm really curious to learn more. Okay, so anyway, let's go back to the strategy. Okay, okay, yeah, the strategy. I got lost. Okay, so there was like these images then stuck in my mind, and I think that I did almost everything starting from this image, which was done, was given out PubCon by Fabrice Canel. And he was saying, okay, people, when they sort of know what they want, they use a chatbot like Bard. People that, or Bing Chat, people then they know what they want, they will go on search. So for me, if I want on shoes, I will go on search. I will not go to ChatGPT for that. I will directly go, it's the brand, and the brand have to be on search. Now, on the chat, I will ask probably which are the best running shoes, for example. Then in that case, I will go on the chat. So, okay, so now we have to keep that in mind. When will I use and what will I use? So it's more like conversational query will go more in search. more informational query, you will go more in the chat. Now, so for me, and here I worked with Jason Bernard on that, because like when I came to all this conclusion and thinking, but thinking doesn't bring you much. So it was like, and now what can I do with that? And then I worked with Jason because I knew that he had like the Kaliq process, and we modify a bit the Kaliq process together to adapt and have like the perfect combination for the new generative AI, which works pretty good. But again, I am curious to know other people's strategy. So, okay, so the idea is, the main idea of the Kaliq process in the reality is like work to make you become an entity and feed the correct information to Google. In the background, there is 3 steps, but in the background, that is everything. So the first step is the understanding. Okay, so in the understanding, it's really, if you have a brand, if you have a company, if you are a person, like make you become an entity. So I am taking into account that you know what an entity is. If you don't know it, ask it at the end and we will work that through, okay? So the idea is that you want to make sure, then let's speak about Google, then Google understand your brand, then you understand your identity, then they understand what you're offering, and they understand your audience. So mainly they need to understand everything about you. So this is the first step on the Kaliq process, which is called understanding. So there is I added this slide because like this is the Google Knowledge Graph. So the idea is that each of these nouns that you are seeing here, these are nouns, are entities. So Italy is an entity, which is like just, I mean, for me, Italy is Italy, and for a knowledge graph, Italy will be probably G/N53457. I mean, a number, okay? And then there will be another number for Leonardo da Vinci. Now, these two need to be combined because like there is a connection between Italy and Leonardo da Vinci. So Leonardo da Vinci was born in Italy. So here we have a connection. There is a connection with the Mona Lisa and Leonardo da Vinci. So the goal is to connect everything, okay? So you have to do the same thing. When you are thinking about you becoming an entity and connecting everything together. So this is what you want in your understanding. Then there is something, then Jason have a huge database, and so he had the possibility to do several tests. And here you have like, I added like the trusted source, which are a list of stores from where the knowledge panel take the information. But as we said, the knowledge panel is quite a bit the visual part of the knowledge graph. So it's really cool to know from where it's taking the information, because then you can also, let's say, adapt your strategy if you know where they're going. Then there is the second thing, which is credibility. Okay, so credibility, the idea behind credibility, it's like a lot of making sure that what you are saying internally in your website, like then Google can see it, you can have it externally. So the two need to be, you need this corroboration thing. You need really to be constant in what you're saying internally in your website and externally. So let me give you an example. If you say in your website, let me think because I didn't prepare it. Okay, yes, I have it. So if you say in your website, for example, that your user loves you, okay, and you are a SaaS company and you're saying everybody thinks that I'm great internally, Maybe you have like people writing testimonial and everything about you. But externally, there is nothing saying that you're great. There is probably even the opposite. So this creates a contradiction. And instead, if you have like internally saying, then you're great on your website. And then externally, for example, what's the name? Trustpilot, for example. Okay, you go on Trustpilot, and then in Trustpilot, like your client is saying how great you are, because it's a SaaS company, many SaaS company will be on Trustpilot. Then, okay, that confirm the information that you're giving. That create credibility. Now there is the third, okay. So this I sum it up by saying, because credibility, it's like, this is why Anna was speaking about it. So credibility, or the way that you want to call it, it's like, for me, the word credibility englobe everything that is it. So, and it can be at the level of author, website owner, or at the content level. Okay, so it means when they apply the it signal, it will be for the author, for the website owner, which is probably your brand, the website owner, and at the content level. But the easiest way from my point of view to understand that is to think, is my company, my brand, and the person that is writing the website credible? Yes or no? Then there is the last part, which is deliverability. Deliverability. It's always difficult to pronounce that. This, in the reality, is nothing else than your customer journey. Okay, so this is a model that I personally like about the customer journey, because it doesn't stop at the moment then you buy, because there is so much more after buying. And it is a loop, so it creates loyalty, and the people became advocate of your brand, and so they will go on. So for me, this is a model that I like, but every company will have its own model. Okay. And so what you have to do here is to stop at each step and think, do I have content that answer what people is looking for? Yes or no? Then you go on, and then you have to say in which format you have it. Is that the correct format for answering? Yes or no? For example, if I go in adoption, okay, let's go in adoption, which is the second part of the loop. So it means that I already bought the product, I already got onboarded, but now do I use your product? Yes or no? This is adoption. Okay, so, okay, we were speaking about a SaaS company, so let's stick to a SaaS company. So now, if I do not use your product, there is a big problem. Okay, I'm not using it. Okay, I bought it, I'm not using it. I will not speak about your product to other ones. I will not say how great you are. So now the problem is that maybe in the adoption phase, I will need you to answer me some questions. So for example, you could create frequent asked questions, you could create video, or you could like organize meeting for me to make sure that I'm adopting your product. So these are just some ideas. But like, obviously the frequent asked question, the video will be good, because like you are answering question connected to the adoption, the system can go through it and can see the questions that you are answering, and then probably people are using. And if you remember at the beginning, do you remember then there were like suggested question, for example, for On, which was this fantastic suggested question, is On a good brand? Yes or no for running shoes? Okay, so maybe you could drive these suggested question by feeding them to the machine, by giving, like, give everything out of your brand and you want people to know. So here I did a schema it's the last thing, don't worry. This is the last and we are done. So here I did a quick schema just for you to think about it. And it's really about, okay, do you want to produce the content for a step, we say adoption, for example, yes or no? Okay, if it is yes, okay, so I don't know why wouldn't you produce for each step, but let's say then I give you the opportunity to say no. Okay, so if you say yes, then you can ask yourself, okay, what are people's expectations in this step? Because this in the reality is all about that, is understanding other people and what they want, understanding your customer. Okay, so now what search intent people has, and then what people want to know in this step. So you can list your question, answer your question. Obviously, you just don't want to let people drive everything. You want to have also your part of your side of the thing, what you want people to know about your brand, because that is typically something that you want people to know. So you put these two things together, and then you create your material for each step, and you ask yourself, okay, do I have the material ready? Yes. Okay, maybe it's good like this, or maybe you just want to improve it because like you answer one part but not the other one. Or maybe you say, no, I don't have material. Okay, let's think about that, and let's think about which format do I want. Because again, we want to drive generative AI. We want to drive Google. We want to drive Bing. What we want is that we are driving, not that they are driving us. So we want to give them the information so that they can use them. Okay, that's all. That was my conclusion. So the thing that then we pass through it. Why generative AI? So remember the on case. Why the knowledge graph is important. So remember the problem of hallucination. And then we went through the brand strategy. So I think that's my conclusion. Okay, questions.
Yeah, Sara, we have a few larger questions come up. Given your experience in this area, I'd love to hear you talk about how you're currently quantifying for your clients the potential impact of inaccuracies in the search generative experience, given that we don't currently have visibility in tools like Google Search Console into what types of queries and how often users are seeing your website come up in the SGE.
So what I do, because is exactly that, I have a huge problem on that, is like, how do we track that? Because that is like my main problem. So what I do is that I do several things. First thing is that I try to explain to the client, like, for example, I use the graph that we saw about Fabrice Camel, because then that already helped me to say, okay, if in the chatbot, you're not in the chatbot and people are asking questions and are pushing down, then you're losing on all the informational query. Okay, that's first thing. And then to know about the hallucination problem, I can know it in advance. The only way that I find now is to test it. And sadly, I don't know how to do it differently. I've thought a bit about it, but at the moment I'm going on something else. But it's really at the moment, like the only thing that I do, I sit down with the client. We figure out which were like things that are really important for them. And then we test it. Or I say to the client, test it and make sure that it makes sense. Like we come down with a list of query or a list of questions that are really important for the brand. And then they test it, we test it together, because I always want them to give a feedback, because I will never know their brand the way that they know it. Mm-hmm. And there I can see, okay, they will come up like, hey, Sara, this makes no sense. They're speaking about me, but they are putting my competitor website. Like, and they are like, okay. Or these kind of things sometimes come out. They were coming more often than now, in my opinion. Or maybe I do less testing, I don't know. But I see it a little bit less. But yes, this is the only way that I found till now.
I'm reassured by that because that's the method that I've been using, and I think it's a bit old school, right? We're in this stage of the rollout of SGE where we have to take screenshots and date them and monitor the appearance of our brands on our top queries manually until
Yeah,
there's some more innovation or more data available.
exactly. I'm waiting for that. I'm dying for that. But at the moment, it's the only way that I found. As you say, old-fashioned school.
Yeah. So one other question, you talked a lot about in the third section of your remarks about how important PR, outreach, and maintenance of facts about your brand and external databases, third-party review sites, even the customer experience, shipping, pricing, product adoption, all of those aspects have on EAT for your brand and website, and your inclusion as as a known entity in the knowledge graph. How do those conversations go with your SEO stakeholders to help them bridge those gaps, those departmental divides, and see this work as something that's touched on by many more folks in the organization than just maybe the content editors or the digital marketing team?
So you are asking the $1 million question, Anna. So the story is like this. What I do, so what is happening is that I speak to the clients and then they will be like, because the story is then I did have to do a mental shift, first of all. So I understand that it's difficult because I understood SEO is no more SEO. It's like SEO is with everybody because we need to build everything together. And so I did have to really do a switch. Now, the fact that I did the switch helped me also to present it. And then obviously my clients are like more digital marketing, like it's the digital marketing department that will come to me mostly. So then they will, not always, but like already a couple of times, then ask me, okay, Sara, could you prepare a presentation that I can bring it to my boss?
Mm-hmm.
And then we can collaborate, so create a structure to collaborate all together. So I don't know, it is weird for me, but it happened a couple of times, and so I did it. I mean, I support them in trying to make it as easy as possible in the understanding so they can go to other departments and they can present and say, we really need to collaborate. But that doesn't happen all the time.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, sometimes it's hardcore.
Yeah. I think that that's a really good way to conclude, though, your idea that the $1 million question is when executing on your recommendations here, that it is about advocating and communicating across the entire brand.
Yes, it's exactly that. You nail it perfectly. Perfectly.
We're so lucky to have you, Sara. And we will be releasing the recording and a summary on our blog for us to share more widely.
Thank you.